Hi, my name is Michelle Vassel. I'm the tribal administrator for the Wiyot Tribe. I would like to talk to all of you today about historical trauma and place-based healing. And David and I are planning to talk to you a little bit about the changes, the long-term changes that we're working on in our community using regenerative economic development to re-indigenize.
And I'm David Cobb with Cooperation Humboldt, and very excited to be in this session as well. And really, Michelle is going to get us kicked off substantively, but I do want to actually try something, and please forgive me for how badly I'll do it. But I want to say Gia Juja, which means hello in Gaelic, because I have learned that my ancestors who once lived in right relation with the earth are from Scotland and Ireland. And that is my effort, thanks to Michelle, who is lovingly pushing me to decolonize my own thinking and my own experience, and reminds me that I too descend from people who were once in right relation with Mother Earth. So with that, welcome, and I'll turn it back to Michelle.
So I want you guys to all kind of have a idea of where we're located in the world. And so I'm going to start off kind of like by telling you where we are. The Wiyot Tribe is a small tribe that's located in Northern California. And by Northern California, I mean a 6-hour drive north of San Francisco. According to the Wiyot creation story, Wiyot people come from an island in the middle of Humboldt Bay. We currently call this island Tuluwat, but Tuluwat has had several names over the years, including Gunther Island and Indian Island. Wiyot people lived on and around Humboldt Bay since time immemorial, and people coexisted with other tribes, fishing and tending local indigenous edible plants and trading with other tribes. While Russian fur traders were the first European people to come to the area, significant settlement really came with the gold rush, and the gold rush had the biggest impact on this area and Wiyot people in general. In February of 1860, Wiyot people were in the middle of the World Renewal Ceremony, which that particular night, all the men were off the island. A group of settlers snuck onto the island in the middle of the night and murdered sleeping women, children, and elders. Similar massacres. That massacre is famous. It's called the Indian Island Massacre because there happened to be a writer from the San Francisco Chronicle who was visiting in Eureka at the time and was one of the witnesses to the massacre and wrote about it, and it made worldwide press. But similar massacres that are, not known happened over the course of the next few weeks all around the villages of Humboldt Bay. Federal troops at Fort Humboldt began involuntarily removing people, and I'm going to put up quotation marks for their protection. They were held there in deplorable conditions at Fort Humboldt and then relocated to Hupa, which is about an hour and 45-minute drive from here, and then up to Smith River, which was another hour and 45-minute drive from here, and then down to Round Valley, which is southeast of us, and I'd say a good 2.5 hours from here by car. Despite the relocation efforts, the repeated relocation efforts, Wiyot people continued to return to this place. And although not legally able to step foot on the island, the people waited and rebuilt. In 1908, with private money, the tribe purchased land on what is known as the Old Reservation. And in the 1950s, as part of the federal policy, the Wiyot tribe was terminated and land was allotted to individuals, as this was happening across the United States. And termination literally just, federally unrecognized the tribe as a tribe. The people persisted, and a group of people led by a man named Albert James sued the federal government and won back the tribe's federal recognition and a new reservation at Table Bluff. Today we call that the new reservation. The Table Bluff New Reservation. In the 1970s, another group led by Albert James began talks with City of Eureka to return the island to Wiyot people. At that time, the city was not interested, but the people waited. there is an article in the Times Standards in the 1970s, which is really cool, that really where Albert shares his vision, in which he talks about having a dream in which Wiyot people return to the island and children are playing, and it was going to be a beautiful thing. In the late 1990s, our then tribal chair, Cheryl Seidner, and her sister, and two others, non-Indian ladies, came together to hold candlelight vigils in February every year. They held them in February at the time when normally the World Renewal Ceremony would be held. And it was actually on Woodley Island because it was not legal to be on Tuluwat. And these vigils began to happen in our community. People from all over the community came out, hundreds of people. And these were Native people, non-Native people, people that lived in the area for a short time, people that had lived here, you know, for many generations. But it was through these vigils, I think, that I really saw change happening in our community. It was in this space and by candlelight that we began to see a shift. People came out instead of, you know, turning their backs to this ugly history that nobody really wanted to look at. This was a, you know, very traumatic event for the community. People came out because they didn't like it and they wanted to do something. They wanted to make change. They wanted something to do to make it right. So, you know, those vigils happened, I think, for about 14 years. And in the middle, you know, during that time period, a piece of land that was privately held on the island came up for sale. And our then tribal chairwoman, Cheryl Seidner, came to our council at that time and said, she basically asked for permission to buy it. The tribe didn't have any money to purchase it, but the council agreed and the fundraisers began. And Cheryl's sister, Leona, designed a logo for the effort called, which we called Wiyot Sacred Site Fund. And we began selling t-shirts and sweatshirts and buttons and everything we could think of. I think we had watches and clocks, and we put that logo on a lot of things and we sold things and people bought them. And then we had some other events that were bigger, that were more community oriented. Like we had an art auction, a couple art auctions, and a bunch of benefit concerts. And by 2001, we had the money to purchase the 1.5 acres, and that 1.5 acres had been used for about 200 years as a boatyard. So it was basically left as a hazardous waste site. The tribe spent about 12 years restoring the island. And by that, I mean, we removed about 60 tons of scrap metal, and we shored up a part of the island, which was an ancient midden. I don't know if you know what a midden is, but it's basically a shell mound that's built up over time by people living there. So while in the beginning I was talking about this place being the creation where Wiyot people came from, island is also, you know, made from Wiyot people living there. Anyway, the shell mound was eroding due to diking that a gentleman by the name of Gunther had created these. He was trying to raise cows on the island, and he diked off parts of the island to reduce the amount of water that was coming, tidal influence on the island. Anyway, so we were able to shore up part of that island. That particular spot was where the island was eroding. And we also removed tens of thousands of tons of toxins and hazardous waste from the boat repair facility that once operated on the island. I cannot describe to you how it looked when we first got there. Literally, you couldn't walk across without getting hurt. There was this twisted metal everywhere and these gigantic tubs and vats of things that are today illegal. But, you know, 100 years ago, 150 years ago, there were things that were used in boat making. There was lead paint, just tons of it, just, you know, laying around, and everything was rusting and eroding. We also removed invasive species such as Spartina and planted native plants, which enhanced wildlife habitat and actually really blew up as soon as the invasive species were removed. We noticed, like, we planted some but as soon as that Spartina was removed, the plants really came back. The native plants really came back, and those native plants are important for, habitat to live. I don't know if you guys know about eelgrass, but eelgrass is really, really important thing it's like considered a nursery for marine life. And so by removing Spartina and the eelgrass coming back, it really helped to improve fish conditions in our area. Anyway, as you can imagine, removing all this toxic stuff from the middle of Humboldt Bay really impacted the community as a whole. We all had a benefit from it, whether you're a fisherman that fishes for a living, or you're just, a family and you fish for food, or you're an oyster farmer, or, whatever it is in this bay that we all use. By improving these conditions on the bay and improving water quality, it really worked for improving our environment as a whole. The removing of the invasive species of Spartina on the island, we found when we removed it, it was actually seeding a lot of Humboldt Bay. So by removing it from the island, other places, Spartina was removed, not necessarily removed, but not spreading anymore. So it really helped our whole environment. Anyway, I really wanted to talk to you about this because I think that by creating this environment of healing our place, and by coming together as a community, by working hand in hand to remove metal and toxins, and bringing other members of our community in to be part of that process, we really healed as a community, and we started making connections that didn't exist previously. And that's one of the ways that I got connected with David Cobb, is on that realm. So you want to take it from here?
I can, but do you want to just say a word about the Terrigen fight? Because that y'all really led that fight, and I feel like it's your story to tell, and I'd love for you to say a word or two about that first.
So the Terrigen, we had a group of people, a big corporation really, come to our area, and they proposed putting up these windmills on a site that we call Sakiyuit, which is a high prayer site for Wiyot people. There's only 2 other of these places in our community. Anyway, there are laws that say, hey, when you have when you propose to do a big construction project like this, that you're supposed to have talks with tribes to determine whether or not there are any, if it could be a village site, or it could be a culturally significant site. This particular place, had all of these things because of its location, because it was, spiritually, religiously, it was this, high prayer site, but also it's basically the place where 2 tribes, like the boundary of one tribe and the boundary of another tribe begin. And so it's a place where there's a lot of historical, cultural items, not just like physical items, but also there's signs of Wiyot life there. There's things that Wiyot people traditionally ate that are in the ground there that have been growing consistently for thousands of years. We have speakers on traditional Wiyot speakers that are on recordings that anthropologists came in and took interviews of Wiyot people a long time ago, and in these recordings there's talk of the trees that still exist there. So it was a very historically and culturally and religiously important place, and the corporation was required to come and talk to the tribe. They did so. We told them that we like windmills, we think windmills are great, but this particular spot, we asked them if they could move them somewhere else. And they came, they talked to the tribe twice. Both times they heard what we said, and they proposed to do it in the same place anyway. And so our tribal government told us, hey, our elders said, we're going to fight this, and we did. And I really believe that while our council and some of our tribal elders were leading the fight, it was really this deep relationship that we'd formed with other people in our community, the businesses, the local organizations, just the people in this community over time that we've worked with, that all came out together with us to fight this fight, and we won. And it was a pretty exciting day.
Thank you, Michelle. I never get tired of hearing you both ground us into this place, but and then remind me about this place, because Michelle and I, we're neighbors, right? And I live in Jarajiji, also known as Eureka. And I always like to start these presentations because it's the beginning of my decolonization, when Michelle taught me, and Ted and others of the Wiyot people shared, that Jarajiji means a good place to stop and rest, right? And that's a way to they just said that's a way to think about it and remember. And then what I realized on my own was I had this epiphany that a good place to stop and rest, because for the Wiyot people who have lived here since time immemorial, they were so grounded in place that this village was on a spot on Humboldt Bay, because they were river and bay people, that it was a good place to stop and rest as they were traversing the rivers and across Humboldt Bay. To be that rooted in place, wow, like it really meant something to me. Like, so just the language itself began to change. Michelle began this conversation by saying that our intention, both for the work that we do together and this session, was to discuss historical trauma and then place-based healing for that trauma. So at the very beginning, y'all, I said that I know that I descend from Scottish and Irish folks. And that was a time when my ancestors were in right relation with each other and the land. And so it is my fumbling attempts to try to return to that, because you see, that's what I deserve. Like I am supposed to, and you are supposed to, and the goddess intended for us all to wake up every day and to be filled with a sense of sacred connectedness to each other and to Mother Earth, that we belong here and that we are supposed to be here, and we're supposed to be nurturing this place together. That's our proper role. And it pisses me off that I have to realize that I am swimming in trauma, both that I've experienced and that I've caused to others, because my ancestors were pushed off of that land by the English Empire. One of the reasons I have a particular hatred of the English Empire. All empires suck, right? Like, let's just be clear about that. But for me, because of that history, the English Empire is particularly personal. And my ancestors experienced profound trauma, pillage, plunder, etc., and were pushed off of their lands and came to this continent and caused profound trauma and pillage and plunder and just horrors on the people who lived here. I know that's true. You know that's true. We all know it's true. And you know what? It is easy for somebody like me to get caught up in some sort of shame or guilt around that. But you know what? My mama, which is, by the way, Southern, I'm from East Texas, Georgia, and Louisiana. So I like to say I got the South on lock, right? But my mama taught me an important lesson. She said, son, always remember that guilt is a useless emotion unless it provokes better future conduct. So she said, if you're ever feeling guilty about something, that's your conscience telling you to either stop doing something or start doing something different. So, and you know what, as somebody who really tries to grapple with white supremacy and the historical interconnectedness between capitalism and white supremacy, like, you know how many times I've ever had a BIPOC person say, oh, you're feeling guilty? Thank you, that really helps. Answer, zero, not a single time. Of course not, because that actually doesn't help anybody. But you know what does help? Actually dismantling systems of oppression. And as my brother, who raised 2 daughters on his own, often says to his little girls, hey, it may not be your fault, but it is your problem. And that's how I actually feel about white supremacy and capitalism. It may not be my fault, but it is my problem. And so that's the sort of the backstory and how I enter into this conversation, because I can tell you the story that Michelle told. I've been living here in Jarajiji since 2004, and I knew the history, but I really honestly didn't know exactly how to participate or what I could do. But thanks to Michelle and Cheryl Seidner and Ted Hernandez and others who hosted those vigils, I came to them. And I was moved by them, and I was invited in to proactively doing something. And I can't tell you how grateful I am to the Wiyot folks who allowed me the opportunity to actually do something that felt productive, that felt positive, that helped me root myself into the place. Because see, here's the thing, y'all. Here's where I live. I live here now. I am a guest of the Wiyot people, an unwelcome guest, or pardon me, an uninvited guest, but I'm trying hard to be a welcome guest. I'm trying hard to actually be a good guest, right? So that's what this opportunity gives me. I also participated in that Terrigen fight. And so what I saw was, once again, when we take the leadership of the Wiyot people, actually we can win. And what was especially moving to me was learning about the restoration ecology that the Wiyot did on that island, on Dulawat Island, what for them is the sacred island. And I began to imagine, what if we did that everywhere? For real, like what if we literally created an economy, which I now know is called a regenerative economy or a restoration economy? What if we literally did that? What if we shaped the whole thing? So my friends, that's how I enter into this this big picture. I do want to share screen very quickly and share with you all just a bit about Cooperation Humboldt. I'm going to share the screen and let you know, or so that you can just see with me. At Cooperation Humboldt, we believe that our current institutions are fundamentally racist, sexist, and class oppressive as a result of social, political, and economic systems that incentivize domination and exploitation of women, people of color, and poor, homeless, disabled, queer, undocumented, and indigenous people. We believe that capitalism is an economic system based upon exploitation and oppression, and that it will destroy the planet if we do not shift to a cooperative and sustainable economic system. We believe it is possible to create new institutions that incentivize cooperation, love, compassion, and kindness. This new system will be capable of supporting every person with a good quality of life. We believe in lifting up and supporting groups that are doing grassroots organizing with working class people and people of color, who are training organizers and building long-term strategies to resist fascism and create new models for a joyous and collaborative new future reality. Lastly, we believe we can work with you or your organization, even if you do not believe these things, but we want to be explicit and clear about who we are and what we believe. And I'll tell you folks, the clarity that that statement gives, in other words, we'll work with anybody. But if you want to actually be in leadership at Cooperation Humboldt, I like to laughingly say, you must be this tall to ride that ride. You've got to actually be willing to confront and grapple with white supremacy, settler colonialism, heteropatriarchy, and capitalism. And that clarity has allowed us to step into spaces with the Wiyot Tribe and with Be Black and with the NAACP and with Centro del Pueblo and with a whole host of other folks that we can engage and work in true solidarity, not charity, but real solidarity. The second thing that I want to share, because I think it's very important, is to share one of the things that we were doing even before I got a chance to personally know either Ted or Michelle, and that is our participation at Cooperation Humboldt with the Wiyot Honor Tax. I'm sharing my screen so you can see a bit about that. This, in essence, is a self-imposed tax that we at Cooperation Humboldt pay to the Wiyot people to acknowledge the sovereignty of the Wiyot people. We occupy at Cooperation Humboldt, our office is also in Jarrajiji, traditional unceded Wiyot territory. So we are guests here. I want to really lift up the work of the 7th Generation Fund for Indigenous Development, who actually created this concept and idea. So they put it forward, and we at Cooperation Humboldt, for our inception, recognized that it was an incredibly important idea. And so at Cooperation Humboldt, we pay 1% of our entire budget to the Wiyot people as a tax. And it is an explicit tax. It's not a charitable donation. It is a self-imposed tax to honor their sovereignty and to acknowledge their rightful place as stewards, as Michelle and Ted have taught me to say, since time immemorial. And so I would encourage you to get to know what land you occupy and who the original inhabitants are, and to experiment with it as well. The last thing that I want to share is finally to talk about, so how do we escalate what the Wiyot have already been doing? And that's where I'm very excited as a lawyer to share with you that Michelle and I are literally, as we speak, doing the work of creating an indigenous community land trust. Now, a community land trust already exists under law, and it's a way that you can hold property in trust. Often and usually in our community, it's almost exclusively done to reserve ag land or forest land or other undeveloped land. But it can also be used for affordable housing. And there are many places that are doing that. So yay, that's great. But even better, there are indigenous-led community land trusts. Yay, that's even better. What Michelle and I are doing, which as far as I can tell, Michelle, seems to be the first place anybody's done it, is to create an indigenous community land trust that is actually in partnership with non-indigenous folks in a community to completely restructure the social, political, and economic reality of that place. Folks, straight up, we're not joking. Michelle and I intend to use this indigenous community land trust in order to completely re-indigenize this place, to create worker-owned cooperatives, to create affordable housing, to create restoration ecology jobs that do for this entire area what the Wiyot did on Dulawat. And the last thing I'll say before I kick it back to Michelle, and then we can open it up for discussion, is we're creating an investment fund called Goats Lakahul, which means money that makes us well in Wiyot. And every time I say that out loud, I almost get tears in my eyes to imagine that there can be a word for money that makes us well, because growing up in a capitalist power over dominator shitty society that we live in, and having grown up in poverty, the idea of money that can actually heal is something that is literally mind-blowing to me. And so with that, I want to pass it to Michelle and ask if she has anything that she wants to add about the Indigenous Community Land Trust that we're building together. Michelle.
I don't have anything to add, David, but maybe we can open it up to questions from everyone else.
Folks should be able to unmute themselves if they want to. Or folks can put their question in the chat if you don't want to unmute yourself, that's also fine.
Hi, I wanted to thank you for all the work that you're doing, and also ask if there's any kind of guideline that you think should be the base of recreating this kind of project that you're doing in any other territory that we're occupying.
Thank you for that. I would say, I think that the most important element was to have a space for people, like-minded people, to come together, maybe give people something to do, that instead of I think that change really happens when people come together. So giving people space to come together and then directing that space into what we can do together. So having someone, a strong leader who can say, hey, for us, it was Cheryl Seidner that said, let's buy this piece of land. And, and we worked on that. And then, oh, it's a hazardous waste dump site. Let's clean it up. It wasn't just overnight that happened. And it really was a variety of people. It wasn't just one person or a company or any particular person that cleaned that island up. It was in the beginning, we held open volunteer call outs and said, please help us get this gangly metal off the island. And does anybody have a barge we could use to put this stuff on, and people came out, people came out to volunteer, people donated, we had a local business donate a barge. We had a local business donate, one of those big bends to put things on. We had a local business help us with porta potties. We had lots and lots of people that came out to help over time. When we had our concerts and our auctions and things, there was the people who, volunteered to put on those events. But then there was also the musicians and artists who gave us their art at a discounted rate. Or for instance, a lot of the musicians that came out, we would get these big top name Native American, artists, but, we couldn't afford to fly the whole band out. But, a lot of local people put their hand up and said, I'm a drummer and I can play guitar. And so they helped with our backups, so they could play while we got the top name performer to be out front. And then all the people that came in and just showed up and bought tickets, that helped. And then, over time, all those people coming together and doing stuff towards an end, that was powerful. That was big ticket stuff that created long-term relationships, sitting next to each other, picking up twisted pieces of metal, or, there was this giant engine on the island. That was a huge effort to get out. But, doing that kind of hard work together and over time, it really creates, it develops relationships that are deep and are bigger than just signing a check or something. It was deeper than that. And I think that is where the real change happened in our community. That's where the real healing happened in our community.
Thank you, Michelle. And thank you, Mimi, for really a profound question. Michelle's answer just made me give me chills. I also have to say, Michelle is one of the most modest folks that I know, and she will always lift up Cheryl and Ted and all the other wonderful folks. But I just have to lift up Michelle Vassel because the steady leadership that she has given, the graciousness and the space to allow healing and allow mistakes. And I've learned so much from her, and I'm so grateful for her. I also think it's really important to recognize that Michelle is now my friend, right? We worked together for a while. I knew about, and she knew about, right? But in the space of the work of actually doing authentic work, that's where a friendship developed, and that friendship now, it extends beyond that. I make, we have some personal jokes between us because we're working so well and seamlessly together. And that only happens in that space of trust, right? So, I think I can say for myself, I trust Michelle. When Michelle tells me something, I know she's telling me the truth as she sees it. I'm not saying she's infallible. I'm saying that she is telling me the truth as she sees it, and that I'm able to navigate that space together. So that's one thing. The second thing that I would say, Mimi, to you and to everybody else, it's really important not to sort of exotify Indigenous folks and say, and just wait to be told oh, great wisdom. Yes, they absolutely know things because they are closer to the right relationship that all of us descend from. Chris Peters, who Michelle and I know, often says, remember that, he said, David, you descend from indigenous people too. And so even though you weren't born knowing right relationship, it's in your DNA. So your job is to find that, is to get back to that right relationship. And I'll conclude this. He once said, you know, David, when we say that the trees are talking to us, it's not a metaphor. The trees are talking to us, and the trees are talking to you too, but you've forgotten it because your parents and grandparents had it stolen from them. But your job is to learn to listen. And I got to tell you, that was such a powerful statement. So I'm trying to learn to listen, not just to Michelle and Ted and Cheryl. I'm trying to learn to listen to the trees.
Awesome, thanks. So we have one question in the chat from Eben Bien. I apologize if I butchered your name there. So it's so grateful for this talk about regenerative economics. My organization, our youth, spend much of our time lobbying legislators for policy, including those that direct money from the fossil fuel economy to environmental justice communities. We try to hold that work in relationship with the racist, classist history of past economic policies. How do you think we can best influence and align markets with our values without simultaneously reinforcing the problematic parts of markets? Just a small question, if you want, if either of you want to take that one.
Michelle, I'm happy to let you go first. I've got some thoughts here, but I want to give you the space.
Go for it.
So,
I know I could see it in your eyes.
Believe it or not, that is one of my favorite questions. Michelle knows that, because I'll be honest, y'all, like, I don't hide this. You go to the website, you'll find, it's easy to see. I'm a straight up revolutionary. I believe that we have to restructure all of society, that including the economic system. And my analysis around class is not only a lived experience as somebody who grew up in poverty, it's also intellectual as a Marxist. I've read and studied social change. I've read and studied economies, and I believe genuinely that we have to actually transform the entire economic system. Because see, capitalism, and I promise you, Evan, I'm gonna land on a specific answer, but it's important that we understand that capitalism has a definition. It's actually quite easy to describe. 5 characteristics. 1, the private ownership of the means of production, right? That's not just factories, but it's farms, it's ranches, it's fishing, like anything that is producing goods and services have to be privately owned or whatever possible. That's in capitalism. 2, that the goods and services are produced not for need, but are produced for sale. That is commodity production. 3, that commodity production is for profit maximization, that everything is to maximize profit. 4, that labor itself is just one more commodity. It's not sacred human endeavor. It is just another commodity that you buy and sell on the open market. And 5, that everything is allocated according to the market. And see how I landed, Evan, on your question? See, those 5 characteristics are the definition of capitalism. I promise you, go to any introductory textbook at a university, college, even a 12th grade high school civics class, that'll be basically the definition. Here's the problem. When you understand the implications of all those things, it literally leads to the commodification of Mother Earth faster than she can possibly regenerate herself. It is literally the idea of unlimited growth on a finite planet, which is the ideology of the cancer cell. Capitalism, as currently operating, is literally going to destroy the planet if we don't interrupt it. So what do? Well, here's the thing. Michelle and I have bumped up against some folks who are what are called impact investors. And what I'm going to do, Eben, and for anyone who wants to get in touch with me, I've dropped my email in the chat. Hit me up, and I would be more than happy to share, because I think we need to share this idea of impact investors combined with philanthropic money to say, okay, yes, we need to engage in a new economic development system. that's within the existing market economy that transcends and transforms it, right? So we can't just, I can't just hate my way out of capitalism, right? I have to work my way out of it. And the way that we work our way out of it is to understand, and here's something Michelle's heard me say before. See, I used to say, like I'm anti-capitalism. I'm not anti-capital. I'm going to say that again. I'm anti-capitalism. I'm not anti-capital, because we need capital to be able to invest in people so that we can restore and engage in healing our trauma, but also the trauma that we've inflicted on this land. So, Evan, there is a way to do that. I hope it wasn't too sort of up in the air, but to be clear, we have, and that's why, by the way, I'll say one quick word, Michelle, about what we're doing with our project. Number one, 7-member board of directors of this Indigenous Community Land Trust. 4 of them are designated by the Wiyot Tribe. By the way, not named. The Wiyot Tribe is named to designate it. See the difference? One of those spots is held by Cooperation Humboldt. Again, not a name, not David Cobb. Cooperation Humboldt as an organization is committing long-term to this project, which will designate. Number 2, we're asking the Humboldt Area Foundation, which is philanthropic money locally, to designate a spot. And the last one person is from the fund of impact investors. See the ratio there? First of all, for Wiyot and every other group only gets 1. And the investors, 1 of 7. What we've literally done is flip the script. And instead of saying, allowing the moneyed interest to actually dictate what we're allowed to do, Michelle and I, working with folks at Full Spectrum Capital, I want to give them credit for helping us think through all of this. We're literally creating a filter that says, even before money can come, you have to understand that we're only going to invest in projects that the Wiyot Tribe agree to. So never again will a Terrigen project come on our watch. And get this, by engaging the entire community into a popular participatory bottom-up project, Terrigen or anyone like them will never dare to come into this community because the community has self-organized ourselves under a proper relationship with the Wiyot people to say, we have a plan for this community. And this community, our plan is one of healing and restoration, and is a place where our grandchildren's grandchildren's grandchildren are going to be able to flourish. So don't even step into this place with your bullshit power over destructive, ecologically terrible systems, because we've got a new plan. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Awesome. You're getting a lot of love in the chat. So one question that came up that said, sorry if you covered this before I joined, is from Michelle. It said, was wondering if you have any guidance for how to balance working in partnership, guidance of Indigenous leadership, and capacity to get the work done.
I think David kind of talked about that on our current endeavor with balancing our board with, you know, heavy weighted on the Wiyot side. But I also wanted to kind of talk a little bit about our former tribe. When we were originally going to try to purchase land on the island, and we were asking people to help us do that, there was a fear in the community about, oh, the Wiyot tribes come to kick us off the land, you know. And she used to say, we're not here to do that. We're not asking people to give up, you know, where they live. You know, we've been kicked off our land, and we're not going to do that to somebody else. We understand that. And so that was, I think, a really important piece. But also, we had a guy who really fought us in. I didn't talk about this in my little talk, but we worked with City of Eureka after we bought our 1.5 acres. City of Eureka saw what we were doing, and that, you know, while Albert James had gone to the council in the city council in the 70s and was rejected, requesting the city-owned portion of the island be transferred to the tribe. back in 2004, the city of Eureka, seeing what we were doing with our 1.5 acres, agreed to give us the adjacent 40 acres that was next to the piece that we bought. And we were actually able to do a lot of environmental work on that piece as well. And then more recently in 2019, the city returned the rest of the city-owned property, which was an additional 270 acres. So most of that island is now the tribe's island. But during that portion of time where we were trying to get that 270, we're working with the city of Eureka to return that 270 acres. We were I don't know, I guess attacked by someone locally who said that we were going to make this public land non-public. And we were kind of like, well, you know, the tribe, what's the difference between a city government and a tribal government? We're governments, you know, it's public land, you know, we're not, our intention was not to kick people off, but rather to restore it and to be able to culturally use it in the way that Wiyot people hadn't in a long time. In the original 1.5 acres, that was a village site that's called Tuluwa. On the other 270 acres, there was another village that's called Nakgadal. And that place was included and returned in that 270 acre time. But I just thought it was an interesting conversation. It was fear-based and trying to help people to understand and work with, you know, I guess community education to try to balance that fear, you know, was something I think that we had to get over in order to move past. And that long-term relationship that we built with people in this community, working in that, you know, 12 to 14 years working on environmental restoration, really, I think helped to give us credibility in that regard.
Great. Alex, feel free to unmute yourself. You should be able to and ask your question.
Hi, I'm Alex. She, hers. I'm over in Minnesota, east of the Twin Cities on Dakota land. And I arrived late. Sorry about that. I had an appointment at 11. So just joined as soon as I could. So I apologize if you've covered anything that I'm about to ask. But I actually have a couple of questions for both David and Michelle. So I guess my first one, just kind of going off of what you were talking about, Michelle, I'd be really interested if you guys have any recommendations for my own personal research, just getting to know more cases of regenerative economics happening with Indigenous-led folks like yourselves in various places. I think for me, post-pandemic, it's all just like, I've always been kind of like Marxist leaning, but I think just seeing how fragile this whole system is, let alone unjust, it was like, all right, let's figure out how to get tapped into that. And so I'd really be interested to know if you guys have any referrals in that sense. And kind of transitioning from that, I have a BA in environmental studies. I've worked mainly in nonprofits and actually youth development with an intersection of environmental education and sustainability. And I want to go back for my master's. I'm not entirely sure what yet. But in doing this work, I was just kind of curious if either of you'd be able to speak to what you feel like some of the most valuable skill sets are. Is it having an understanding of the legal framework? Is it having financial savviness, like, you know, knowing how to work the money systems that be in order to transcend them? Is it, you know, being more of a healer and going for a background in social work? I was just kind of curious. And I know that's a very broad thing and also kind of specific to me, but for other young people who are also thinking about, you know, what should they be studying? What is needed in the movement? I'd be curious to know.
I'm just going to say, Alex, I think that all of those things are important elements and they're all like parts of the wheel that's needed. I personally, you know, my background is psychology. I guess that's probably why I'm most connected with the place-based healing and the trauma-informed care and the healing of historical trauma. But, you know, we needed those environmental people that to do that work or to tell us how to do that work. You know, I didn't know how to do that personally. And we needed engineers. We had to ask engineers. We needed a lot of different types of people, and people with specific knowledge, and people that just, maybe didn't have any specific knowledge or, contribute to the overall guiding theme, but just like extra hands on deck when we needed to lift something big. So, we all contributed in every different way. And I really like to think about it as a community effort that was made up of all people, and not just Native people, not non-Native people. It's an effort to come together.
Gabby, thank you for that, or Alex, thank you for that incredibly personal question, because I think that that's where the best questions are. So if anybody, so I'm going to literally address this directly to Alex, and if it lands for anyone else, good. But in the civil rights movement, they used to have they had lots of good sayings, but the one that I want to lift up right now is get in where you fit in, right? And what that means is there are lots of different places where work is needed. And for you and all of us, I think the thing to do is to really assess both what are your desires and passions, but also what are your strengths, right? Like, so like I loved to play baseball as a little kid, and I was really good at it until I got, I remember getting to college. And then I saw my first curveball, and I became all of a sudden like the Little League All-Star to, oh my God, this is embarrassing. Like I can't play at that level, right? So no matter how much my passion might be to be a Major League Baseball player, I can't be a Major League Baseball player. I can play it on the side, like I still play softball, but I'm just saying, I'm not saying be ridiculous and just do whatever your heart desires. I'm saying figure out what your calling is, then figuring out what your strengths are, and then with that Venn diagram of an overlap, lean in there. Because as Michelle said, there's work desperately needed in the law, in economics, in public health and social work. So where you fit in is really going to be a function for you, Alex. But you have to have that worldview. And I really want to lift up, there's a great book that was really influential for me called Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer, that just completely, like, it's a worldview, right? And then getting to know Michelle and Ted, like after I had read that book, I was totally like set up for this next stage of my human effort. The last thing that I want to do is refer you, Alex, and everybody to the chat, because Gabby gave a link to resource generation on investing principles that can help build the solidarity economy. And then I followed it up with a framework on what the solidarity economy framework really is. Because one of the things in the solidarity economy framework is pluralism. In other words, it's not a rigid, dogmatic, you must do this thing in order to get to transformation. It's a recognition that there are many paths up a mountain, right? There are many ways that you can actually get to a goal, but what is important is that we have a goal for ecological regenerative sustainability, that we have a goal towards racial and social justice, and that we are unwavering in our commitment to the intersectionality of understanding power over dominator competitive mindset and lean into the cooperative power with collaborative mindset. And that's the sweet spot, because as long as we're leaning in to our principles and values, the individual work that we do will sort of take care of itself, right? Like it will, or I should say, it will, like, that's not true, you have to work. But what the work is will become clear, right? I saw you smirk at me, Michelle, when she said, it'll take care of itself. I was like, no, it takes a little perspiration to make to combine with the inspiration.
If other folks have questions for Michelle or David or both, feel free to, or points of just conversation, feel free to either pop them in the chat, or you all should be able to unmute yourself.
I had a question. Hi, my name is Gabby. I was just wondering if you could speak a little bit more to the specifics of how the land trust and the investment fund, the worker-owned businesses, the co-op housing, kind of all of those different pieces fit together in the project, and how you're going about like developing them, if you're working on all of them at once, if there's different people working on different projects, and kind of how they're all interconnected.
Can I just say yes, 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 and yes. We're working on them individually. David has his parts and I have my parts. We're also working with other people who are more focused on specific projects. Yeah, I'll let David pick up with more of the legal issues. We're working on it on all fronts simultaneously.
Thank you, Michelle, and Gabby, thank you for the question. And I can tell you that yes, we are we're working very closely with the group that you may know, Full Spectrum Capital Partners, who have been really helpful for us to put us on this track. Of course, I know, Gabby, you're at the New Economy Coalition. So I got to say, folks, like Gabby is really modest, right? Like the New Economy Coalition is the shit, right? Like they are a group of people. I use y'all's policy framework all the time, and it's incredibly helpful. So what we're doing is doing step by step. And we're each playing our proper roles, right? So Michelle and the Wiyot are actually providing the leadership on this place locally, right? And what regenerative restoration ecology will work. So I, as a lawyer by training, I don't practice law anymore, but I have a law degree, right? So it's not like I forgot everything when I crossed out of Texas into California, right? So I've been putting that to work, but also creating this, working with others to create this unique indigenous community land trust. By the way, Gabby, it's also based very much on the East Bay Permanent Real Estate Cooperative model, the EB-PREC model. But notice that this is indigenous led, so it's a little bit different, right? So, and by the way, when we do this work, as we're doing this work, we intend, like this is actually, we're telling you what's happening now, but it's not even done yet. Like we're still doing it. So we're going to be leading on the New Economy Coalition and others to trumpet this, because we want this to happen everywhere, right? Like this should be happening everywhere. This should not be a niche alternative. Oh, behind the redwood curtain, look at what the eco-groovy hippies are doing with the indigenous people. No. This is going to be something we do everywhere. The second thing that I want to invite folks to is an upcoming conference that Michelle and I and others are doing called Post-Capitalism, Building the Solidarity Economy. I'll drop it in the chat in just a moment, but I want to invite folks to come. It'll start on Earth Day. What a beautiful thing, right? And in that, we're going to be literally talking about the concrete tools all together that can actually truly transform our economy. We call them non-reformist reforms. Gabby, it won't be a surprise to you because this is directly out of the New Economy policy work, but those non-reformist reforms are public banking, participatory budgeting, worker-owned cooperatives, community land trusts, universal basic income, locally owned energy production and distribution models. See, the thing is, every one of those things are beginning to happen right now, but they're kind of happening in isolation. Our job, and I mean, not just Michelle and David, I mean, all y'all, right? Like all of us together, our job collectively is to amplify those things and to network them together like a rhizome, right? Like we need to actually net a completely new political economy that puts people and planet first. That's why these are non-reformist reforms. You know, I'm a revolutionary. I don't make any bones about it. And Alice, I see you popped up on the screen. You know, you've heard me talk about this, right? Like I want to restructure society and I'm not backing down from that. But I also know you can't just jump from the world that we live in now to the world I want to live in. You got to take step by step. And so I used to denigrate reforms by saying, I'm a serious revolutionary, blah, 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 blah. But now I realize that that was arrogant and foolish. Because you have to actually make people's lives better right here, right now. And that's why it's important to pick non-reformist reforms, because I will not just work on a reform that accepts all the other toxic, racist, sexist bullshit in which I live, right? Like if it's like, oh, well, we just have to accept all that to do this one little thing, that's a reform that I reject. But a non-reformist reform says, here's what we can do here, right now, to make people's lives better and undermine power over dynamics and undermine competitive capitalism, undermine the settler colonialism mindset, right? We can decolonize even as we do economics. That, I think, is the sweet spot. And I'm gonna drop in the upcoming post-capitalism conference in the chat. Totally free, but you do have to register.
All right, we got a question in the chat from Maya that says, where do you hope this project looks like, or I guess, what do you hope this project looks like, feels like in 10 years? Which is a great question.
Well, we are looking at building some housing in Eureka that's going to prioritize Wiyot people in the selection of who will be selected to be there. But we're also looking at trying to build on existing footprints. We're currently bidding on some parking lots. The city of Eureka is got some RFPs for. So instead of developing, in our redwood forest or in land that is untouched or natural right now, we're looking at developing in the footprints that already exist in our downtown area and just in the middle of the city. David's really got his eyes on some properties that are dilapidated and who are being operated by slumlords. He wants to sort of take those over and rebuild in some really good housing that everybody wants to live in. But we're also looking at eco villages, which are basically places in which people can live in small housing units with shared communal space that's more like in touch with the land. We're hoping that we can really create some better housing in our area that's really going to help be a place where people want to live. We don't want to build the projects on a parking lot. We want to build something that looks nice, that's green energy, that has that's not only built with green materials, but also helps people to not have such big energy bills every month, and also uses things like passive things like natural light and opportunities for green space and collective space so that community grows there. We're really working on creating places where people want to be, where Dave and I would want to live also, places that everybody would like to be at, not some big square cement building in the middle of the city, but something that's going to look like a place that you would want to live and is affordable.
Right, because you know what, like if it's not affordable, it's not revolutionary. And I'll also quote my friends at Movement Generation, who sometimes, two things, they say a lot of things worth quoting, but two things I quote all the time. One, if it's not soulful, it's not strategic. I'm gonna say that again. If it is not soulful, it's not strategic. And for a linear thinker like me, that's something that I really have to remind myself and lead into, and also give myself permission to cry, to give myself permission to actually just sort of be, I don't know, pie in the sky, if you will, no, it's okay. Like getting in touch with that is actually good. The other thing that they say is, if it's the right thing to do, we have every right to do it. And as a lawyer who's been trained and steeped in property rights uber alles, like really getting into that and really realizing that the problem is, if we only do what we're legally allowed to do, all we'll ever do is stop more harm from coming. So we're going to have to actually be willing to be courageous enough to engage in nonviolent civil disobedience, and to build new alternative structures, and to demand to completely restructure the whole thing. We have to lean into our completely new vision. And so my vision really is like, not 10 years, but my grandchildren ought to be living in a place that looks more like what the Wiyot had here before white people came. And that all of the appropriate technology is actually being used. In other words, I'm not saying that we can't have electricity. I'm not saying that we can't have modern society. What I'm saying is we can't have it in a way that turns the natural world into an extraction zone or a toilet, right? Like we have to understand that anything that we do to the web of life, we do to ourselves. And so I literally can imagine, we may not get there in Michelle and I's lifetime, but I've gotten a chance, at least. I haven't met them in person because of the pandemic, but I see her kids, right? I can imagine her kids being our age or my age. I'm a little bit older than Michelle, being my age and actually looking out and seeing a food forest where food is so readily available that literally it's not a commodity that's bought and paid for at a profit. In fact, and people are engaging in meaningful, productive work, right? Of helping to nurture and create that food forest, not because they, quote, have to, but because it is invigorating, because it is inspiring, because it's genuinely rewarding. Because here's the other thing, y'all, people want to work. If you understand work to be meaningful, productive human endeavor that is sacred and that you are respected and acknowledged for doing that work by your community. What people don't want is a job where you're shoved around, bossed about, treated like shit, and then the value of your endeavor is stripped away as the surplus value by the capitalists who have turned your work into a commodity. Work is sacred and it should not be a commodity. And healthcare is a human right. It should not be a commodity. And food itself, we have a right to nutritious, organic, culturally appropriate food. That's a right. Oh, and by the way, what did my grandparents, your great grandparents call organic food? Somebody write it in the chat. You know the answer. What did they call organic food?
Food.
Food. Thank you, Michelle. They called it food. This system that we're living in is unnatural. It's the one that's been imposed on us. They have lied to us. They've taught us a toxic fairy tale creation myth that we've got to expunge ourselves from and actually get ourselves reconnected to Mother Earth, reconnected to each other. And here's the kicker. That's not merely poetry. That shit is possible.
Awesome, thank you. I found myself thinking and wondering, David, if you live in an apartment and if some neighbor is hearing this and like, what is going on? Amazing. But I did want to lift up a question from the chat, which asked if there was any examples of regenerative economics, and I guess that take place internationally, not necessarily on an international scale, although that would be cool too. The question comes from a participant from Asia, and so curious about those contexts. And just a heads up on time, it is about 20 minutes to the hour, just as you're thinking about responding.
So I will jump in on that one because I think that I probably have the best connections, frankly, internationally. And what I'm going to share with folks is so I have the honor of co-coordinating with I do my 80-90% of my work is all local, right? But I am the co-coordinator of a group called the U.S. Solidarity Economy Network. That's why I know and work so well with the New Economy Coalition, who are also another national formation. And we are connected to an international global bit of work. And I can't pronounce it in French, which is what that's, but I've given you the website and you can access that in both Spanish and in English and in French. But it actually is basically the International social solidarity economy network. And so I can assure, and I know for a fact, there's an entire confederation of folks doing solidarity economy work in Asia. I just don't know them personally, but you can get to them through RIPUS.
Awesome. Okay, let's see. Someone asked in the chat, I think it was Mary, asked, let me know if you need an intern or apprentice. So if there are opportunities to get involved, you may want to plug those here.
Yes, as a matter of fact, I'll let you know that Cooperation Humboldt does run an internship program, look, anybody who is like rolling with PowerShift are the kind of people that we want to connect with, right? So if y'all are in a position at your local, university or college, we actually have, I can jump through the hoops on my end to ensure that you get credit at your university or college for it. So if you are in a university or college setting, we can get you an internship. I can't pay you money, but we can do a remote internship in which you actually get the opportunity to earn some college credits. And you'll also get into a 12-week study group cohort, which I'll plug. I'll drop that in the chat now, even if you can't intern with us, because I think that one of the reasons Cooperation Humboldt, as I said at the beginning, we are so grounded in our intersectionality is because we have, before you get into leadership, you've actually got to go through and read and study and grapple with white supremacy, heteropatriarchy, settler colonialism, capitalism. There's not a test at the end of it, right? But by going through those readings and those discussions, we really build both social solidarity, but also a shared political framework. So again, I've dropped my email in the chat already. And Izzy, if anybody hits you up later, please feel free to share that with folks. I make myself readily available. So if you feel like you want to roll with us and hone your skills as a peaceful revolutionary, we'd like to work with you.
There's a clarifying question from Alex. Is the 10 to 12 week cohort open to the public and non-interns?
Yes, it is. What I do say is this, thank you for asking. We do restrict it, right? Because it only about 10 to 12, 15 people at most can happen at one time. So we prioritize folks from Humboldt County, right? Because we are Cooperation Humboldt, we're working here in Jarrajiji, right? So it's a place-based thing, but we always allow between 10 to 15% of any cohort to be from outside the area. So I'm going to drop the link to the website where you can sign up. The next one starts May 29. And again, there'll be 10 to 15% of those spots that are available for a non-Humboldt person. But don't worry, because we're actually offering these sessions about every 3 weeks or so, because frankly, we're being overwhelmed, which is a good sign, right? And honestly, y'all, I used to, and Marcus in the crowd will get a chuckle. I used to work my butt off to try to convince people, please come to a study group. Please, would you come and read this stuff and let's have a conversation? And I would have to literally spend hours organizing just to get one study group together, right? It would take weeks of hardcore organizing to get one study group. Now, when we open up a study group, we're overwhelmed, right? And it's not because I'm doing something different. It's because this historic moment, we are in a conjuncture. We need to lean into this conjuncture and avail ourselves of it.
You just reminded me of the dark crystal. We're trying to heal the dark crystal.
That's another thing that Michelle and I share. We will often trade Star Trek and other utopian science fiction stuff together. That's one of the things that actually has been a basis of our personal friendship as well as our work stuff. You bet, we are the dark crystal. And I just dropped the study group into the link, so feel free to hit that up.
Fantastic. We have about 13 minutes left. If folks have other questions, again, feel free to unmute yourself or pop it in the chat. I'll read it for you.
I can talk for a couple minutes about food sovereignty. David was talking about food forests and creating places where we can access food communally. I don't think he really, dove into what that means, but we're working on that on the reservation. I did a survey of our tribal members a few years ago, about 5 years ago, and was basically asking people if they ate traditional Wiyot foods, and if they didn't, what were the reasons? Was it because they didn't know how to cook them, or they didn't have access to them? And the overall biggest numbers came in as they didn't have access to traditional foods because where they grow was private land and they were not accessible. And so we are working on that as a tribe, but also that's another area that Cooperation Humboldt is working on with us, at planting not just native plants, not just food plants, but traditionally useful plants all over the place in public spaces where we can get at them. So, like David's group, Cooperation Humboldt, recently planted fruit trees here on our reservation, but we're also planting like Indian potatoes and particular plants that are useful in making baskets and making fish nets and making things like that, that in order to be able to continue those practices, you need access to. So we're planting them everywhere we can. We're working right now on a project with College of the Redwoods at creating basically a space in order to do that on a college campus, community college campus, and it'll be a learning environment for both students and also be a food access point for students. So that's definitely something that we're trying to get at so that people have access to food.
Awesome. Anybody else who wanted to chime in?
Hi, can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
All right, I'm on the phone. I was curious if you'd talk about the funding model for the land trust.
I don't have the percentages handy. David might have something more specific, but we're working on a combination of, donor money that people are willing to give to us for these projects, grant money, and then investment money. And these are people who want to spend their money changing the environment. It's not necessarily a gift, but a loan.
And thank you, Michelle, Abby, and thank you for the question. As Michelle had said, we are seeking both philanthropic and investment money. But I also have to lift up that Michelle has been working her butt off, on top of all of her, like Michelle is the tribal administrator for the Wiyot Tribe. She's basically the CEO. She is responsible for all operations of the entire tribal government, obviously under the leadership and direction of the elected tribal council, but literally she's the CEO. I'm the executive director of Cooperation Humboldt, and we've got so many projects that I didn't even talk about, right? We're doing this work right now, like after hours on the side, like, at least I know my board has encouraged it because they want me to do it. And I know that the tribal council knows that Michelle is doing it. So we're not, but we're doing it in addition to all of our our additional work. Like nobody magically came in and said, oh, you've got this great idea. Great. Yeah. So we're doing all this on our own sweat equity right now. We have raised enough money philanthropically to create that community land trust. So that's, step one. But Abby, the thing is that we are putting together a slide presentation that is seeking, again, philanthropic donor money, but also what is known as revolving fund money, which is loan us money, but loan us money that we will pay back at either 0 or 1%, right? Because this is the thing, y'all, philanthropists actually control over $1 billion of the economy. And so what we're saying is, instead of investing in good like solar power, or yes, invest in solar power, right? But not just that, invest in regenerative economic development, right? Like things like we're doing, because you could do it in your own community too. Like we need to create opportunities for investment that will return return a profit for investors, but those investors have to understand it's not the old capitalist model of you get as much as you can as fast as you can. That's the extractive dig, burn, dump model. We need a new regenerative economic model that actually says slow money, you can actually still have a return. Now, ultimately, I want to live in a society where we don't even think like that anymore. But again, that's the transitional moment that we're in. How do we take people to actually help them understand that there's actually, that decolonizing doesn't have to mean something scary and that you have to leave where you currently live. It actually is a new mindset. It's actually going to be good for you. And in fact, that it's going to be something that you really love, and that when you, so I'll stop there, Abby. Our ratio is probably going to end up being about 10% straight philanthropic money, about 20% investment by folks who are actually living in, working in the co-ops, et cetera, and the other probably 75% will actually come from impact investors. And we're going to have we are working up a prospectus right now for folks who are willing to look at a long-term investment that they'll get a reasonable return, but not the rapacious return that they might get from, pillaging and plundering. Abby, did that make sense?
Totally. It's really exciting that it's that much impact investing.
Well, and like we were talking about earlier, with everybody has their place they're on the wheel. We know that, some people can't, do the work, but they are, with us and they have the money. And so we're helping those people to do what they want to do in this world, to make a better place with the money that they have, which is just as valid as sweat equity, Also, I wanted to note that with grants, the problem with being almost solely grant funded is that you're limited to whatever public policies are hot at the time, and they are hot and cold every day, depending on the politics of what time period you're in. 1 minute, this is the best thing that since sliced bread, it's being funded. The next minute, oh, that's old news, it's not being funded. And so having all of your, your whole basis of your work based in getting grant money basically limits you to whatever's popular at the time. So having a diverse, just like having a diverse portfolio in your retirement fund is really important in having a diverse portfolio in your, the work that you're doing.
Awesome, thank you. So I just want to uplift a comment in the chat because I'm sure there are folks to be interested in it. Alex asked if I imagine it was David and Michelle know of any regenerative economic, social impact investing, finance degree programs and certification. And David responded to check out the Impact Finance Center if other folks are interested. I think with that, we should probably close out for the session. Thanks so much to our speakers. If anybody wants to unmute and express any gratitude, now's a good time to do that. And thanks for the participation from everyone.
Both are amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
This was amazing.
Awesome.
Does
Thanks.
somebody mind dropping, I think it was an email that was also shared earlier in the chat. I apologize that I lost my chat, but I would love to put that email.
I think it was David's email. Great. Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your conference. And thanks so much to David and Michelle. Take care, y'all.
And if you're not full, come to the post-capitalism conference, because this is 4 days of going deep. So, but make sure, I hope to see some of you at some of the other sessions as well. Bye, y'all.
Take care.